narcissism, whereby everything from global conflicts to the latest flavour of popcorn is poeticized through the informantic imagination, which sees everything as an occasion or opportunity for subjective productivity in the formation of fully exteriorized individuals. There is nothing new, only topological reconfigurations of the same material by new methodologies or techniques, technologies. The fountains of glory regurgitate the same water, yet enthrall us all the same. The dynamic database perpetually serves up fresh views of pre-coded information, dazzling with baroque detail, viewable from all angles by each spectator, who can both nourish it and consume from it at will, as from the supply chain in the fabrication of just-in-time cultural subjects. And from here I turn to Frankenstein. So when I started rewriting, or rather reconfiguring Frankenstein many years ago, I originally thought it was going to become simply a new novel. However, having been invited to exhibit extracts of it and in a desire to animate it either through performance or other media, it's taken on now a number of different forms as well, a few of which I'll give examples of today. And of course, then knowing that it's going to be performed or transcoded through various media, then of course influences the writing itself. So for example, I started creating phonetic phrases or whole phonetic texts, the meaning of which is only really properly construed when it's vocalized or verbalized. And then I started maybe orienting the narrative itself to reflect either on its medium or on its occasion of first presentation as well. So it's become quite an involuted process, and the novel itself has become very dispersed and expanded. So just as a recent example of that, I was commissioned last year by Isaac Willis, who's here, to write a review of the horrendous flop film I, Frankenstein, using only words from Frankenstein, and then post that on the Rotten Tomatoes website. And then it's going to be produced in the magazine eventually, I believe. So one piece can take many different forms as well. For example, Justine's Time Ballet, which is also known as the Panegyric and the Interface, is a text which I originally produced for an interactive performance using Max MSP software. And the text itself is an attempt to write or rewrite a technical description of that software using only words from Frankenstein. The text was originally produced, performed rather at Artlix, and then went to CCA Glasgow, and has also been published in this rather nice booklet by John Lawrence. Is he here? I feel like I'm doing the name. Which also features work by Martin. And I also made a very, very simple animation of it to accompany a conference. So I'll just play a little snippet of that now to give you a sense of the language. Okay, so many of my Frankenstein 2 productions are collaborative. And the next piece is a 30-second black and white 16mm film that I produced in collaboration with Lucy Reynolds for the exhibition Film in Space at Camden Arts Centre, for which Amy Clark also made a piece for Lucy. And so it's a film about film. And it also plays on the dialogical or intertextual nature both of Shelley's original work but also of my reconfigurations, and I suppose in a way you could say both works are also quite interfilmic as well. And it also plays on the idea that my project in some way constitutes a form of time travelling with language. So quite simply, the film constitutes a series of film titles that are written using words which also occur in Frankenstein. And last year I was invited by Pengalia Collective to contribute to a film marmalade event at IMT Gallery, considering the relationship between the monstrous and capitalism. And so I produced and performed a PowerPoint presentation, a slideshow based on the sales brochure of a light industrial bioscience business park in Oxfordshire. And so this is a kind of clear instance where, when vocalised, the elision of words sounds like a plausible, if slightly contorted, commercial sales pitch, but where the subtext is revealed in the written language. So I'll just read a couple of slides from this to demonstrate that effect. This is a record and celebrated shone of the growth and vibrancy of the life sciences cloister at the heart of Clerval Place, the largest in Oxfordshire, and indeed one of the most significant in the Ukraine. It is important that we all feel safe and secure when we go about our daily business. With CC2 fail, alarm monitoring, poor man hunt, police community support officer present, and over 500 hours per week dedicated especially to on-site security, we like to think that we give you that execrate reassurances and peace of mind. Again, working with Pengalia Collective, as Martin mentioned, in 2012 I had a solo exhibition in their gallery, and given their interest in music, I took the opportunity to produce an album of pop songs based on words from Frankenstein. And for this I worked with a Glasgow-based musician called Joe Howe and a couple of other vocalists to produce an album of 8 songs. And some of which were also mashups of other pop songs, such as David Bowie's Heroes and Lady Gaga's Monster, having first extracted the very few words that weren't also contained within Frankenstein. So the song I'm going to play for you now is an homage to Blondie, but it also reflects back on the original Frankenstein narrative and then unfolds in the rap section to a commentary on the then recent London riots. So with slight apologies for the rather dull aesthetics of this, I haven't got round to making actual pop videos as yet, but this is just to clarify the lyrics for you.
It's quite a good way to start a conversation. So, call me and the day I'm married. Even if you hate the Sabbath, but it's creature that you made me with no future never great. You destroyed my hope, why I'm so. Took my picture, but there's no one there. Nothing to compare, but it's so bad. Products, speculation, aspirations, and inflation. Too little, too late, but keeps to regulate. That generation without the destination. The people that turn out to be itchy. Respect no rules and down by it. Stole my soul, slit our soul. Here I am, speed, train, and crash. Tangible surface, off the crash. Back to back, face to face. Our spot of the human race. Nothing to make, nothing to do, nothing to consume. But you, I'll have you whole body gold. You will be mine, Mr. Frankenstein.
And so, to conclude, I'm going to read an extract from the new work that's been commissioned for publication by, coincidentally, Tombstone Press, as a collaboration with the publisher Gareth Crossgreen Barnett, who contacted me having found Labyrinthal in Glasgow. So it's a piece of science fiction, the gist of which will hopefully become clear. And just to refer back to my opening dialogue, it illustrates how, in relation to Frankenstein, I'm caught between the narrative I want to tell and the language available to tell it, but also my need to expend words. I need some kind of accent for this, but I'm not going to attempt one. It'll come in time. They suspended my Felix account after I was caught cell carrying on my return from Rhode Island. The syndics gave me 20 months outside, no time bending allowed. They even seized my memory, which was pretty harsh. So here I am, forced to endure a continual present of unalterable appearances and natural sensations, all by the rule of Justine, most rational of all lawgivers so far invented since human mind was decreed too irresolute to deliver justice in the chemical age. Crime itself has become a very different beast since Pache was forcibly introduced, eradicating the violent strain at birth. Cold, calculated murder is still possible, of course, and there remain many means through which to inflict injury. But the intensity of mental heat that is produced in the conception alone of such activity renders it simple to detect and dismount through counsel mediation and a short period of feelings resolution. And since it became possible to mark and track any object of any substance, even ideas, very few are successfully robbed. Ownership is very last century, anyhow. As an underground feelings merchant, I have a pretty good knowledge of these fields. I used to work for Composure, the chief feelings laboratory, which for the most part produced government-approved feelings for application in crime, healthcare and education, as well as the armed forces when they still existed. We could not only produce feelings, but also remove them. For instance, a disposition towards vengeance and malicious hatred is simple to dispel by infusing the subject with a considerable quantity of benevolent compassion, maintained by a degree of guilt. A maternal instinct induced in those who feel inclined to murder a child. Every nurse is obliged to testify to any massacring tendency and take daily kindness as a precaution. The means for eradicating excessive hunger were already discovered long, long ago in the age of enormity. But what they then realised was that appetite is driven by a complexity of desires, the least of which is actual hunger. And the food empires were quick to exploit this irremediable weakness so as to continue to force past the lips all manner of smoothed scourge that masquerades as food. Not satisfied at that, they began to add to the natural capacity of food to alter feeling Breakfast now came with added cheerfulness, calm, glory, fortitude, childhood memory, village life, awaking hope, generosity, the sunlight of warm meadows, the spirit of Peru, sedulous zeal, soul-inspiriting texture, all of which we poured down our throats with the smiling milk of happiness. There was some contention over the use of belief and gratitude. Other than that, there was little attempt to regulate. As you might expect, this opened the gates to all manner of private consumption and the opportunity for someone with my talents to make a small fortune. I began to create what one might call everyday affirmative feelings, such as affection, pleasure, consolation, great remedy for grief or incidents of failure, particularly when combined with comfort. I also offered plain enjoyment, wonder, and revived an ancient form of ecstasy without its original side effects. Self-esteem was liberally poured on the youth with some monster results, and harmony was equally applied both in the family and workplace, as was on occasion indefatigable enthusiasm. I could have retired on wedding night wildness alone, but have never been one for boundaries. I had also begun to notice a demand for the dark side, as it were. I was on familiar ground here, given the feelings I had created at Composure for application in the League of Justice. It's common practice for a criminal to receive a daily quantity of the sufferings he or she has inflicted on their victim or victims intended or otherwise. This is the first step towards feelings resolution. Fear is the bread here for this kind of feeling, and it has many different shapes, from mild apprehension and uneasy sensations to feeling somewhat disquieted or perturbed with a sense of unremitting consternation that can lead to becoming anxious, haunted by perpetual forebodings that threaten you and make you feel alarmed, intimidated, then you feel endangered. You are fretting and become frightened, from half frightened to full volume afraid. You now experience terror. You are horror-struck, continually shaken by tremulous, heart-sickening palpitation, and remain in a shuddering condition of pure, unallied dread. The family of fear will keep on giving, but there is a whole world of other, less common feelings to encounter. Since the law to suppress rage came into force some generations ago, there is evidence of a swelling curiosity and, I would argue, necessity to experience anger. Unless you can afford to make the perilous and long, hard, harsh, hideous journey to the highly remote Rage Island, the only place on earth where rage and violence are still permitted for the purposes of experimentalist science and live ancient human studies, then the only means of feeling the sensations of anger is through a merchant, such as myself. You might warm up with mild vexations as a foretaste to outward anger, which in turn upgrades to fury with a free raging frenzy application. Once satiated with anger, you'll no doubt be tempted to explore its close cousins: hate, detestation, hideous contempt, and heavyweight loathing. I can also conjure the antique forms of abhorrence and treachery, and even their quiet friend, reproach. Crime is a great creator when it comes to feelings, and I took pride in my interpretation of physical sensations caused by a variety of wounds, particularly those that result from the intricacies of prolonged torture. In this capacity, I consider myself as a conductor of a concert of pain, from extracting teeth and being beaten by chains and blinded by all manner of instruments, with burnt faces and freezing feet and shattered limbs, all rising to a paroxysm of combined agonies. I can also lend my hand to sensations of being suffocated, poisoned, immured, exploded, and fatally emaciated through a very, very prolonged period of starvation. But perhaps where I have really made my name is for my ventures into lifelessness. Following the actual act of dying, the experience of death itself is at the top of the list of requested sensations. The conception of oblivion that anyone can pretty much do, but I can give you a body at different stages of decay, from sensations of the swelled corpse to feeling besieged by worms to the ultimately relaxed state of dissoluble muscle fibres, and finally to become the mis-scaffold of a dry skeleton. This passage from subject to object gave rise to the request for a field of feelings hitherto unexplored, which, as a merchant with a head for enterprise and a reputation among my fellow society of feelings alchemists to uphold, I was more than happy to fulfil. The nature of the process of feelings acquisition requires the bodily inscription of code that is the active stimulus of a chain of ancient memory events, which are recognised and recalled by the body in a transaction that is referred to as affectation correspondence. It then remains for me to procure the memory events of other materials, an object, images, occurrences, words, or other phenomena as intervening elements which will act on the body as a new language, of which the subject will gain an intuitive rather than rational understanding. Through continual rapid-fire repeating, the body will meditate the new language as it is re-echoed through its veins and nerves, and mind and eyeballs and fingers and left arm and feet and head and bosoms and neck and cheeks and joints and underarm hairs and tongues and teeth and hands and eyelashes and throats and heart and ears and tears and blood and butt and limbs and smiles and breathe and muscles and right shoulder and thrush and cataract and complexion and dimples and laugh and navel and lips and periods and voice. I have thus been able to construct innumerable portmanteau of fusions of feelings, combined sensation elixir, that will converse with your body in my custom-built presence chamber. Here is a small taste from my ample stock, as it might appear in language form. Being poisoned by a word, being absorbed by a surface, being whirled by a whirlwind, being attacked by a memory, being possessed by a chemical, being eaten by a line, being loved on a cross, being beaten by a sound, being abhorred by a rock, being vanished by a road, being penetrated by a younger self, being corrected by a captain, being conjured by a wish, being written by a whaler, being remembered by an M, being made by an Italian, being blinded by a pen, being clapped by a fool, being multiplied by a futurity, being pervaded by a mole, being deformed by a lover, being carried by a deliverer, being disinterested by a glacier, being failed by a circle, being ruled by a glow, being stretched by a superhuman, being betrayed by a smile, being supplied by a farm, being excluded from the present, being spoken by the real, being shrieked by a cemetery, being unbounded by a colour, being saluted by a crowd, being tutored by a pain, being loaded by a power, being kissed by a corpse, being enjoyed by a genius, being raised by an image, being freed by an enemy, being shortened by a blast, being induced by a voice, being moved by a slave, being expanded by a quarter, being watched by a shadow, being bent by a magnet, being staked by a rage, being recurred by a probability, being profited by a banker, being absorbed by a blot, being renewed by a narrative, being aroused by a crash, being thought by a fly, being preserved by a laboratory, being murdered by a rash, being walked by a coolness, being painted by a future, being motioned by a film, being worked by a hope, being wrecked by a ravine, being separated by a magic, being ruffled by a turkey, being gasped by a glory, being dated by a wheel, being snatched by a uniform, being cried by an orphan, being performed by an analysis, being created by an abortion, being suffocated by a raven, being lingered by a glance, being decayed by a mole, being released by a volcano, being gazed by a ruin, being tapped by a certainty, being dreamt by a violence, being devoured by a mute, being streamed by a torrent, being breathed by a stranger, being swallowed by an eye, being relaxed by an execration, being hailed by a cave, being plunged by a seal, modulated by a lichen, by a destiny, an absence, excess. Being modulated by an excess, being plunged by an absence, being hailed by a destiny, being relaxed by a lichen, being swallowed by a seal, being breathed by a cave, being streamed by an execration, being devoured by an eye, being dreamt by a stranger, being tapped by a torrent, being gazed by a mute, being released by a violence, being decayed by a certainty, being lingered by a ruin, being suffocated by a volcano, being created by a mould, being performed by a glance, being cried by a raven, being snatched by an abortion, being dated by an analysis, being gasped by an orphan, being ruffled by a uniform, being separated by a wheel, being wrecked by a glory, being worked by a turkey, being motioned by a magic, being painted by a ravine, being walked by a hope, being murdered by a film, being preserved by a future, being thought by a coolness, being aroused by a rash, being renewed by a laboratory, being absorbed by a fly, being profited by a crash, being recurred by a narrative, being slaked by a blot, being bent by a banker, being watched by a probability, being expanded by a rage, being moved by a magnet, being induced by a shadow, being shortened by a quarter, being freed by a slave, being raised by a voice, being enjoyed by a blast, being kissed by an enemy, being loaded by an image, being tutored by a genius, being saluted by a corpse, being unbounded by a power, being shrieked by a pain, being spoken by a crowd, being excluded by a colour, being supplied from the cemetery, being betrayed by the real, being stretched by a present, being ruled by a farm, being failed by a smile, being disinterested by a superhuman, being carried by a glow, being deformed by a circle, being pervaded by a glacier, being multiplied by a deliverer, being clapped by a lover, being blinded by a mole, being made by a futurity, being remembered by a fool, being written by a pen, being conjured by an Italian, being corrected by an N, being penetrated by a whaler, being vanished by a wish, being adored by a captain, being beaten by a younger self, being loved by a road, being eaten on a rock, being possessed by a sound, being attacked by a cross, being whirled by a line, being absorbed by a chemical, poisoned by a memory, by a whirlwind, a surface, word.
Can we take the roving mics? Thank you, Annabel. We have questions. Yeah, you can. You have. Shall I control?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm kind of struck by, I'm thinking about the last discussion actually with Sir Jones about the kind of freedom that comes when you create an internal economy and you're able then to play with it and speculate on it and make it. So I just wonder if you could say a little bit about, someone used the term agency with this kind of internal economy that you're interested in certain kinds of things. What are the kind of limits that you set yourself, perhaps?
Within this specific project, do you think?
This project or I can see that one.
Yes. Where to start on that? I think, as I said, there is this, I always feel, a competing agency really involved with any cultural object, where it hails you as to say what it wants to say, but then we, of course, egotistically, selfishly use it to maybe do or perform the things that we want from it as well. But I also find that quite liberating, as I think you identified. And partly this project arose from a horror of the act of creation, that sort of horror vacuum, that horror of the blank page, and the idea that we might produce something from nothing. And so in a way it's a recognition but an enjoyment of the agency that cultural objects offer to us. Linda, hi.
Hello. Thanks. Okay. I guess in your what's the title of the sci-fi story?
Affectation, correspondence. Yeah.
So I was really interested in that, in the kind of the desire to be a corpse. It's like this is what people want. They want to be, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot in who it is that desires it. You know, is this kind of mostly white middle class men, which tends to be who are his customers, or is this a kind of post-race, post-class world? I guess that's what I'm interested in, because for me the question is often like, in wanting to be an object, you have to kind of not really know what that's like. So I guess I'm interested in kind of who is main demographic, or who their main demographic is, I suppose, in wanting to be a corpse in the story.
Yeah. How do you arrive at it being your demographic of white men?
Well, I guess because this is what I was thinking, is that often I hear a kind of, especially in the like, oh people, a quite throwaway desire, or you think of someone like Ed Atkins' work, which I do quite like, but this kind of desire to be a thing, or to be an object, and you know, the corpse is the kind of subject-object process you mentioned. But I think that often comes from a point where, never having been objectified, always being a kind of fully formed subject and under the law, that's an easy thing to say, or an easy thing to say you want when you don't really know what it means.
Okay, good. Yes, I mean, I think that would correlate with my limited take on her, which is anything except women extended objects instead of women as subjectivity. But yeah, I hadn't really actually kind of worked through who the main clientele might be, but I suppose it's anything such as what might be the logical conclusion to, our current sort of affective states. Where could you take this? And there are places, I'd like to go, but as I say, the language won't always let me go there. So obviously there's quite a lot of corpses in Frankenstein, so there's a lot of material to play there with that. But I suppose it is always that eternal fascination as well with a post-death state, but also that it might be that it isn't, that it's a kind of living state, it's a living state of biology still. So what might it be like to conjoin within that? And yes, there is an economy of this affected, like who can afford that? I haven't said what my prices are, where if it's cheaper to be conjured by a wish than to become a corpse, so I haven't given you my price list for these. So maybe it is only affordable by the elite. Who knows? We'll see.
There's quite a sort of ambivalence towards technology, it seems. But on one hand, it's highly, customised software seems to be highly used, or point of sale software with PowerPoint, or engagement with pop music. At the same time, there is the thing that's undermining that. So there's this ambivalence sort of running through it. I suppose I'm asking questions about my ignorance of Frankenstein in a way. I mean, apart from, is that an ambivalence that's within Shelley's novel?
Yeah, I
Or do you
suppose
agree
it's maybe it's a shared ambivalence. It's a kind of wanting to go towards it, but also a kind of fear or negotiation of it as well. It's the subtitle of Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus. So obviously there's an element of judgment within that as well. And my own relationship with technology, I tend to use it as a kind of way of getting to know it, and I use texts in the same way, where I work with them to know them better, and I work with technologies in a kind of cat-handed way to kind of learn them as well. So to sort of embrace them on my terms without fearing them as such. Quite often they're a bit rudimentary in that, in my approach as well. Haven't quite reached that level of sophistication in terms of they're functioning.
It's probably, I don't know, maybe I'm just making a sound in the dark, but when I think about the sort of the thing that you market in, I think about that sort of desire that sort of prepubescent teenage girls and myself had when I was 14. I had MySpace and we take selfies and things, and I sort of always desired to look like I did in that the photograph of myself. Like I always wanted to look like I had that Instagram filter on my life. Like I forever wanted to live in this static sort of inanimate representation of myself. I don't know whether it could be interpreted in that way too.
So was that a question? Did somebody interpret it? I didn't.
Yeah, that's, I guess it's more of an abstract interpretation.
Okay.
I guess it could transcend those.
Good. I'll let that float as a... Yeah.
Is that the microphone?
Oh, I think Naomi had a hand, but anyway, there's 2 mics.
I was just wondering where you saw or felt the person who was Mary Shelley, what your relationship is to that person who was Mary Shelley is for you. What do you feel about that person?
It's probably quite an abusive relationship. But I think she might, respect the endeavour as well. It's a kind of inside-out relationship. I try not to think about her too much. Really. I've just got a very, very close relationship with the text, which I've kind of ingested, really.
Has it changed over time, or has it stayed kind of the same for the inceст of the project?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly constant, I would say. It wasn't, I chose the story not, well, yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very appropriate story to use. But her text itself, as I say, is very intertextual. It refers to a lot of other texts. It was heavily edited by Shelley, her poet husband. No, I don't. It's not a relationship with her. It's a relationship with the book itself. But respect as well.
Yeah.
This follows on quite closely from the last question, actually. One can see many reasons why you chose Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I'm just wondering, what were the other texts that you decided not to use? Because there must have been others that you considered and then before you fixed on this one.
Not really. No, I have used other texts in other contexts. I put a whole text by Jean Baudrillard into Internet chat rooms as a prelude to this, line by line, with the kind of avatar name of Baudrillard. So that was the kind of forerunner to using a whole text. And then I had the desire to rewrite and reconfigure a whole novel, and it just seemed like a very quick match. I didn't kind of go through any list or short list. It was just fairly instant. Yes.
We have one more question.
Yeah, so my connection somehow connects to this one. What made you choose Frankenstein? What's the basis?
Well, because it really centres around this idea of a constructed being that you can reanimate as well. So it was a fairly simple narrative choice. But it also focuses on the horror of the act of creation, which I have sympathy with also. Naomi.
I just wanted to ask you to expand, maybe just following on from that, on your notion of the term of the fabrication of just-in-time subjects. So that was a really interesting thing that conjured loads of stuff as I was listening to the fiction. I just wondered if you could unpack that a bit for us.
Okay, this kind of stems from longer research, so I'll try and encapsulate that a little bit shorter. And thinking about how the trajectory of sort of knowledge accumulation and the history of universities, if you like, which used to be in sort of German and English tradition about the formation of cultural subjects. And it's the supposition that in our sort of computational thinking that we don't really need to have absorbed that culture for ourselves that because these prosthetic devices now hold everything for us, we can just, you know, grab from it at will. So that you can, in a very sort of fluid sense, you know, assume new cultural subjectivity in a very short space of time as well, at will and according to the mode that you so wish to be, or somebody else to be. You can probably, it's probably a passive and active gesture or mechanism, if you like. So the just-in-time phrases you probably know comes from manufacturing, and I used to work in translation, and when I was working for Ford, they were talking about just-in-time production of cars. So it's when you just bring everything to bear at the last minute rather than sort of storing lots of parts for ages.
And does that have a specific relationship to the fragment?
Yes, because essentially it would mean that subjects are composed from these multiple fragments that coalesce for a sort of moment of time or a prolonged period of time as a cultural, you know, as a subject formation. So it might be a sort of fleeting formation, or it might be something that endures for a bit before other fragments kind of are assumed to modify that. Or customise, we can customise them, yeah?
I have to move on. Thank you very much.